Namaste, and welcome back to the YouTube channel called Socialist Starseed, where we talk about how socialism and spirituality go hand in hand. And in today's episode, this is part of a series called All About Spiritual Ascension. Last episode, we talked about spiritual ascension in a more introductory manner, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about specifically the root chakra healing aspect of it, which is the first essential step in the Kundalini rising. It's a very important key barrier step to help us along the way of spiritual ascension through the rest of our chakras. Before we jump in, I do have a few housekeeping details as usual. So last episode, we talked about some of the astrological events that were happening, and last episode was around the time of the partial solar eclipse in Scorpio, and so that was dealing with a lot of the shadow parts of ourselves, and so we are now past the second eclipse of this eclipse season, and in the fall at least, and so this one is a full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus. So let's just talk about what that is. I gathered this information from Moon Omen, so I will be linking in the description box below where you can find more of that information so you can read more on this eclipse if you'd like to. So the total lunar eclipse in Taurus, it's conjunct with Uranus and the north node of the moon. And so this is propelling us towards our future at the speed of light and bringing up shocking truths while shaking up the very foundations that we build our lives upon. And I feel that so very much. And this is something that we are feeling both collectively and individually. And so this lunation, it invites us to accept impermanence and welcome change into our lives during a time of surprising shifts and sudden events that may force us out of our comfort zone before we feel ready to. So pay attention to some of the things that are happening in your life. The universe and the collective consciousness communicates with you in the way that you interact with the external world, and even the way that you process things that happen in the external world within your mind. And so pay attention to maybe some of the things that bring up senses of fear or insecurity and just general uncomfortability, and really sit with it and try to see where that is coming from. And often this is the way that the collective consciousness and the universal energy is communicating with us about the next steps in terms of our journey towards reaching oneness. It also is bringing to a head and catalyzing revelations, facilitating clarity, new understandings of something previously unclear or uncertain. So this total lunar eclipse in Taurus is the second eclipse of this fall season, but it also culminates a larger 6-month cycle that began back on April 30th, 2022 with a new moon solar eclipse in Taurus. So just think back to what was happening in your life at that point. For me personally, I remember that eclipse specifically on April 30th, 2022, because that was really the jump start into my spiritual ascension through this year. Now, I've been on my spiritual ascension journey since I want to say I was in high school, maybe even before then, but I think that I have taken breaks in between, and this past year has been the most intensive progression of spiritual ascension that I have experienced. And so that period back on April 30th, I believe it was around the time that Roe v. Wade was overturned. And so that was a huge culmination point of me really stepping into, well, okay, what am I going to do about all of these issues going on around in the world? Because like at that point, politically, I knew that there was all of these atrocities happening, and I really couldn't find the link between all of it. So that was when I started to build my activist profile in terms of joining Socialist Alternative and just really understanding what it means to be a Marxist, which that was a huge pivoting point in my spiritual ascension, was really understanding that, because understanding the greater political economic system that really plays a huge influence in each and every one of our lives in more specific ways than we realize. That is when I really understood my place in all of this and where the flaws in logic was within capitalism, and therefore in the way that we live right now, and really understanding that this lifestyle is not rooted in anything natural. In fact, it's the complete opposite, and it doesn't really function on the energetic level of all other living beings on this planet, which is through unconditional love. So capitalism functions completely separate from that. It's very fear-based, and it's very violent and abusive and exploitive. So yeah, it really doesn't have a role in nature in that sense. That was a catalyzation, and right around that time was when I decided to quit drinking. Actually, it was like earlier that month in April. Also, closer to April 30th was when I had given up my nicotine addiction, which that was a 10-year long battle that I had. So that was a huge turning of a new chapter, that eclipse. So when I was reading into it on Moon Omens, I had read that this would be part of an eclipse cycle that would close out in the fall. And I just remember being really excited to see where this journey takes me. And now that I am here, it has blown me away. I honestly didn't think that this sense of peace that I have achieved after, the multiple ego deaths that I had and a lot of really tumultuous and uncomfortable times of me working through my ego self, I now have come to this place where I feel so comfortable and grounded in my skin, in my body, and I just feel so much more present than I ever have. And that says a lot for someone who grew up with complex PTSD. Eclipses in general, they are all about the ending and beginning of cycles, and they are all about pushing us towards our destiny. So there's always the solar eclipse that happens first, and that's in a new moon, and then afterwards, 2 weeks later is when the full moon lunar eclipse happens, and that is obviously a full moon. The solar eclipses have to do with our south node, whereas this recent eclipse that we had, the full moon total lunar eclipse, that has to do with our north node. So as it was describing, it's pushing us to take a path that hasn't been taken before. It's pushing us towards our destiny. It's pushing us to use what we have learned on our journey so far and use that towards what we are meant to do in this lifetime, past our comfort zones. That is what the North Node is all about. So the South Node has a flavor or a feeling of an ending. So this has to do with karmic endings, and this is to facilitate our soul purpose in this lifetime. So this is what we were experiencing 2 weeks ago, and honestly up until this recent eclipse that just happened. So just think about maybe some of the things that you were feeling, experiencing. What were people saying around you? What songs came up on your Spotify? Because even those are definitely ways that the universe communicates with you, through song, through art. I mean, when you go through your spiritual spiritual ascension journey, you realize that creativity and spirituality are so closely tied, and that's because creativity is the language of spirituality. And so that is the way that the collective consciousness and spirit communicates with us. And feel the things that you are feeling in your stomach, in your body. Are you feeling a sense of calmness and serenity and peace? Or are you feeling a sense of anxiety and a sense of being overwhelmed, emotions that feel unsettling? If you are feeling those things, try to see where that is coming from, because it's not always a bad thing, but it is something that our consciousness is trying to bring our attention to. So it's about karmic endings, and it's to facilitate our soul purpose in this life. It's very synchronistic that this type of letting go happens in eclipse season, which is also happening in the fall, at the same time that the trees let go of their leaves in order to conserve its energy for the winter. We go through a similar process in terms of our connections, our social networks. We are preparing our energy for the winter ahead, and so the same way that the trees let go of leaves that are no longer necessary during the winter or useful, we do the same things. And this isn't a linear permanent cycle, but just a part of being present with the energy that is available to us right now. The new moon solar eclipse in Scorpio was all about our past and old emotional attachments, and it represents where we came from, what we already know, and what we're familiar with, like I said earlier. It's carving out a path that offers us the key to balance existing tendencies. The South Node is about things that are rooted in old stories, old emotions, old attachments, and they're going to be coming up in order for it to be processed, released, and integrated. So there is really no such thing as negative emotions. All of our emotions are really trying to teach us something about how we are processing the world around us and how we live in that network of energy. And so it's very important for us to pay attention to where all of our emotions are coming from and honor them all equally, because they're all equally teachers in their own ways. And so that was the main housekeeping detail. The other housekeeping detail, I do have an Instagram. It's at Socialist Starseed, and so please follow me on there to stay up to date about current events and staying in tune with aspects of political awareness that tie in with our spirituality and just general updates. Also, please stay tuned for a possible change of date in terms of when my releases are. So right now they're set at every 2 weeks, and I think that I can do it every 2 weeks, but it is a very time-consuming process to make videos and edit them and publish them, and I don't think I necessarily understood just how time-consuming it was when I started this journey. And so I'm kind of coming up to a place where I would like to spend more time editing my videos in terms of adding text and graphics and things of that nature, which do take time. So I am currently in the process of contemplating whether or not I should push back the cycles of new episodes being released to 3 weeks or possibly a month. So just stay tuned. I will post something about it to keep everybody in the loop, but I wanted to throw that in there with the rest of the housekeeping details that I provided. So let's review spiritual ascension. So spiritual ascension is basically going through the process of developing revolutionary praxis within oneself. So spiritual ascension and revolutionary praxis are essentially the process of gaining a wider perspective of the world and our place in it through heightened levels of awareness. So praxis means that theory and practice cannot entirely be disentangled. Certainly not when we examine the direct existential transformation of human consciousness involved in the process of awakening. And that was a quote by Glenn T. Martin, who also wrote a really great article and has an involved and detailed website that revolve around a lot of the things that I talk about as well in terms of revolutionary praxis. But I will link this article below that he wrote. It's called The 10 Principles of Revolutionary Praxis for the 21st Century by Glenn T. Martin. So there's this amazing quote in his article that I want to read to you. Quote, "To be revolutionary means that praxis must direct itself towards creating global institutional embodiments of these values, toward making them the founding principles of a living institutional reality, and not merely holding them as some ideals to be worked for in some distant future. Critical revolutionary thinking is not only democratic and socialist in orientation, but is also necessarily global in scope, freeing humanity from monopoly capitalism and the territorial nation state." So the 10 main principles that this article talks about of what it means to have revolutionary praxis in the 21st century, these are just the overheading titles, but the article does go deeper into each one of these principles that's mentioned. So the first one is promote and develop truly critical thinking. Delegitimize the system of territorial nation states and global capitalism in every way possible and on every occasion possible. Commit to solidarity with the poor and the oppressed. Educate for human and planetary liberation. Become a planetary citizen. Think globally and locally, and act both globally and locally. Organize and resist. Organize for political and economic effectiveness, and resist through nonviolent direct action. Practice meditation and mindfulness. Cultivate compassionate solidarity. Think and live compassionately. Think and live with an awareness of the silence encompassing our lives. Be apart from all the world. Think and live eschatologically and cultivate the utopian imagination. So eschatologically is the part of theology concerned with death, judgment, and the final destination of the soul and humankind. So aka super meta. So for me, I envision our future to be one, and this is a dream of mine that I've had for a while, but for us to return back to our village type of living where we really live off of the land, we are more self-sustainable and are growing our own food, creating the things that we need, working together as a team. And I feel like that's essentially what it means to be human. I think that is where we came from, and that's always meant to be a part of us. Whether the times change or not, unconditional love and energetic reciprocity is a key part of what it means to be human. So I envision us returning to that state with a higher level of consciousness that moves beyond the patriarchal paradigm and returns to a state of unity with Mother Nature. So that is what I dream of, and I keep that dream in my head every single day as motivation for why I do the things that I do. Okay, so let's jump into root chakra healing. So before we start, let's talk about what a root chakra is. So the root chakra in Sanskrit is also called the Muladhara, and so the Muladhara means root support, and this is located at the base of our spine, and it's often illustrated as a red 4-petal lotus, and it is connected to the earth element. And the Muladhara creates and governs the 4 main urges. which is food, sleep, sex, and self-preservation. And so this chakra is the baseline of functional and worldly relationships and desires, and it creates a sense of safety. And so this is a very important and foundational and formative aspect of our spiritual ascension. In our society, things can be looked at as very black and white, and so the ego is not bad, it's just a formative part of our spiritual ascension. So it's something that we go through as children in our lives as humans, and we are meant to outgrow it. But the flaw of capitalism being the system that we all live in, it really affects our ability to be able to go through our spiritual ascension process. But it is still a very important chakra for us to really come to a point of healing with, in order for us to move and graduate to the next portions of our spiritual ascension. So you're probably thinking, whoa, hold on a second. We live in a capitalist paradigm, and food and sleep, places to sleep, isn't always guaranteed for everyone, let alone having healthy and fulfilling sex lives and having a sense of self-preservation. And to that extent, you are completely right. We do not have guaranteed universal access to our basic needs, and that is something that we as socialists recognize and are very eager to move towards a reality where everyone's basic needs are met, because we value each and every single human being, and furthermore, every living being. And so I think it's very important for us to understand that there are many things that are out of our control as it is right now, but there are many things that we can control, that we can have influence on, that we can manifest in our life. And so that's what this episode will be diving into. We'll talk about the aspects of root chakra healing that we can partake in, despite the fact that we live in a capitalistic society. And I think for a while in my life, I was in a huge state of slumber, feeling very hopeless and lost in terms of what my direction was in this life. And so I was very much veered off the path of healing my root chakra for a while, and I was engaging in a lot of self-sabotage and abusing myself through various substance abuses, all of these things, just not treating myself with the utmost respect. And so those were the things that I learned were an important part of my root chakra healing, and things that I can control with the resources that I have. And again, not everyone is going to have the same access to resources that I have, and there are people that have access to less resources. And that's why it's important for people like me and you, or if it is you, that have access to more resources than maybe other people in our world. It's very important for us to utilize our resources and our energy in a way that is effective and efficient towards creating solidarity with those who are more impoverished and are more affected by the exploitation of capitalism. And so it's important for us to really know in our mind what our intention is throughout this whole journey, because there will be points where you will question yourself why you are doing what you are doing. But when we can have the mindset of really having passionate solidarity with those who are affected the most negatively by capitalism, that is when we can really create a sense of balance of how we process the collective pain and suffering that we all go through. We all are suffering at the hands of capitalism, but there are definitely some who suffer more than others, and those who are suffering less have more of the means and energy to support those who are suffering the most. That is essentially what solidarity is. That's what creating solidarity means. And so just having that mindset is important. Learning to read what the body needs, like for example, if you are tired, then nurture it with food, rest, and sleep. But if you're overwhelmed with energy and emotions, dive into the root of these feelings by beginning the process of physically releasing that intensity so you can unpack it. Really take that energy and find ways to cope with it. As you go through your root chakra healing, this is kind of the most, I want to say, tumultuous part of your healing. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. You'll have the most ego deaths throughout this process, and it's important to have coping mechanisms during this whole time. And so understand what you enjoy to do in terms of releasing energy. For me, it was working out, it was going to the gym, but also drawing and dancing and creating and just socializing with friends. So I knew what activities and actions fulfilled me and replenishing me with a sense of serenity, energy, and calmness. It's important to know what those coping mechanisms are for you and to remember to continue to use them throughout your whole journey, and developing mindfulness techniques as well. And it doesn't necessarily have to be meditation. I had a therapist who really helped me open my mind to that, and then I continued to read more about it. But meditation doesn't work for everyone in terms of, that's not everyone's best way of accessing their Zen state. People can reach their Zen state in various different ways, from being creative, creating something, to dancing, to singing. So there are many ways to get into that meditative mindset. It could even just be going on a walk or running, or just having some time to really go within and hear your thoughts and process them. And I think as we move through this timeline that we are in right now of the fall of capitalism, yet the worst stage of capitalism for the working class, we are being met with higher food prices, and I don't foresee that getting better anytime soon with the way that our government is functioning and the way that politicians are behaving. I think that circumstances will continue to get more and more difficult, and so part of me kind of listening to my body and giving it what it needs was me getting prepared for those difficult times. Food is not going to be a guaranteed for any one of us, honestly, throughout our whole lives. I think that the fact that it's become such an expectation has removed us from the cycle of food production and the role that we play in those cycles. I think that we're so disconnected from that, and so I think that we have to get back in the rhythm of just understanding that our body doesn't need to be fully saturated with food constantly. I think that being fully saturated with food constantly keeps us kind of in a slumber where we are not really connecting with our spirit selves. And again, our connection to spirituality is within our stomach. So if it's constantly overworking itself to process that overconsumption of food, it's not able to use any of its energy to connect to other things, such as the universal collective consciousness. So just continuing to learn how to listen to your body is very important. Moving forward with this idea of being mindful of our consumption, it moves beyond food in terms of our root chakra healing. It's also to the external things that we use, such as body care and face care, skin care. Those are also still part of our root chakra healing, because although it's not food, it's still part of our sense of self-preservation of our bodies. And so for me, I started to use baking soda, for example, for my teeth and to clean my hair. And it's just better for you. It's all natural. The baking soda keeps my teeth whiter and it's much cheaper. So these are, again, ways that I'm working towards building a sense of sustainability for myself as these difficult times continue. And then also in that journey finding out that I actually like these natural products much better than toothpaste that I would buy at the store or shampoo and things of that nature. And then even beyond that, using vinegar and baking soda for cleaning, for heavy duty cleaning, like for soap scum or for things such as, cleaning your toilet. And then, even things like making my own lotion that doesn't use any chemicals and it's completely natural, and I can use the things that I like to use in terms of different fats and oils for the lotion. And it's reducing my plastic footprint because I am making that lotion and then filling old jars, old pesto jars or whatever that I have. And so overall, just creating that energetic solidarity with the universe by really being intentional about how I live, so I can make sure that I'm in right relation with the energy around us. And as I continue to live in right relation with the energy around us, that's when I start to create those networks. That's when I start to tie those strings with these various energetic beings and centers that are in our world. And that is how we create a stronger sense of energetic solidarity with the other energetic beings around us. And the more things that we're connected to, the more sense of life force that we have, the greater sense of life force that we have, leading us to feel more energy, feel more passion, feel more unconditional love for the world. So all of these little actions that may seem meaningless in the scope of logic, in the scope of ego-based understandings of our world, because everything that is ego-based it's all about quantifying, and these things may seem small and not quantifiable, but when you get into the practice of doing these things and just making it a part of your lifestyle, you naturally start to talk about these things with the people around you, and just awakening people to different ways of living that doesn't involve this monotonous programming that we have been through. I just continue to find ways for me to be more intentional and live in right relation with what's around us, even to the point of using Diva cup instead of using tampons and pads, because it's better for our landfills. It keeps more things out of our landfills. But also a lot of tampon and pad companies are using chemicals within those products that are not good for us. In regards to right relation, it's important for us to understand that right relation fundamentally doesn't exist in capitalism. Capitalism teeters between overconsumption and a fear of lack that comes from a deep sense of insecurity that is created by the elite ruling class and mirrors the relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. This dynamic, it's rooted, like I said, in a culture of colonization. And so it's important for us to have awareness of that, because I think there's a lot of things that are framed in our society right now to make it seem like this type of hierarchy is natural and necessary, when in reality it's completely manufactured. So it's important for us to be aware of this spiritual flaw that exists in capitalism, and understanding that the wealthy are irresponsible and do not deserve to hoard the wealth they all have, because that wealth is hoarded under the delusion of narcissism. We as a collective must cleanse our culture of narcissistic tendencies as a part of our collective spiritual work towards communism. Narcissism is the foundational behavior pattern that exists in capitalism, and it's all based in a lack of reciprocity. It's a very transactional relationship, so it's really just there for that transaction of capital. And beyond that, there is a lack of emotional reciprocity and energetic reciprocity. And narcissism is rooted in living a lifestyle of denial. And you see that in the way that a lot of these wealthy folks behave, as if they rightfully deserve the wealth that they have, when in reality they are stealing this wealth from hardworking working class people who are the ones putting in the most amount of energy for these companies that then these people who own them exploit. So they're not putting nearly the amount of energy that a single worker is putting in, yet they are taking home the surplus profit that is beyond what they pay the worker, which the surplus profit that the capitalist owner takes home, it is usually double or more than what the worker makes, which is now again combining all of those workers that works for that capitalist. He's taking home all of those surplus profits when he energetically did not deserve it. And that is one of the most important things that I learned in my journey of being a Marxist, was just understanding that energetic imbalance and how that fundamentally existed in our economy. And that's what really helped me tie the economy and how it functions to these behavior patterns such as narcissism, and why there's such a spiritual demise that is occurring in our society right now. When we raise our awareness of the way that capitalist propaganda such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those things are specifically in a framework that hinder the growth of people with uteruses, I think that you realize that the need of having sex, it's not always a codependent thing. It's not that we need to have sex with other people, but it's the whole need of having sexual energy in our life. Sexual energy is what leads us to our creative energy. So it's understanding in our root chakra healing portion of our spiritual ascension journey that our need for sex it needs to start with our own sexual relationship with ourselves. And I think that in this capitalist paradigm, we have been shamed into not having a sexual relationship with ourselves, or not talking about it, or feeling ashamed about it, when it is a key part of our sexual development. And without being able to give yourself the sexual needs that fulfill you, then you don't have the power over your sexual energy, and that in itself is a very disempowering state to be in. And again, it goes back to the concept of us even just being mirrors to one another. So if we can't really provide ourselves with that full sexual intensity that we would want someone else to show us as well, then we won't be able to mirror our own fullest sexuality to someone else, because we can't give that to ourselves. And so we are just giving bits and pieces and crumbs of our sexual energy to another person, which is then continuing that cycle of creating a sense of emptiness in another person's sexual energy. And so the only way that we can stop these cycles from continuing to happen is by taking self-responsibility of taking care of our sexual energy. And once we take care of our sexual energy, that is what will lead us to our creative energy. And that is what's so powerful about our sexual energy. It's kind of that bridge between our physical self and our creative self. And so once we start to access our creative self, that's when we're really jumping into our sacral chakra parts of ourselves. But before we jump into those parts of ourselves, when we unlock our creative abilities, that creativity is what is the language of the collective consciousness. So as people go through their spiritual ascension journey, they will unlock various spiritual gifts, and those spiritual gifts coincide with also creative gifts. So these may be gifts along the lines of being a musician to whatever extent, or an artist who uses paints as mediums, or charcoal, or any other medium, or somebody who creates music, or somebody who's a dancer. All of those creative outlets, they are the way that we receive insight from the collective consciousness. So part of our self-discovery in pleasure involves exploring our creative energy, because when we engage in creative pursuits, it opens energetic doors to the murmurs of the collective consciousness. And then when you start to have these creative bursts and explorations, then you start to develop even more coping skills as you go through the spiritual ascension process, because it's not just a smooth sailing path. It's very cyclical, and there's a lot of ego death moments where you're working through some really heavy shadow work, and then on top of that, just external things that we are facing because of just the state that our world is in right now. And so with all of these things that are happening that make our life feel so much more chaotic, it's important to really have space for yourself where you can ground yourself. So all in all, throughout your root chakra healing, when you first start to awaken to the horrors of capitalism, there's a lot of anger that overcomes you. And having strong coping skills within your root chakra is very, very key and necessary in order to sustain yourself through the process of spiritual ascension, so you don't get to a point of burnout or feeling completely defeated in the idea of spirituality itself. So some disclaimers about the process of spiritual ascension, so you are aware of it and can prepare for it. There is going to be a lot of dark nights of the soul through your root chakra healing. And the dark nights of the soul, you can look more into this as well, but it refers to shadow parts of ourselves that we are forced to deal with through universal pressure, whether it's through astrological events that happen that put that pressure on us, or it's environmental changes and circumstances that put that pressure. Either way, there is a sense of external pressure that is bringing us to a point of confronting parts of ourselves that we may have been ignoring or in denial about. So those will occur more intensely in the beginning parts of your spiritual ascension process, and as you go through like the thick of it, just basically a lot of the bigger transition points of your spiritual journey, you will go through a dark night of the soul, and that's kind of just closing certain doors so you can then open other doors energetically. And in the moment, it can feel very overwhelming and frustrating. I mean, at first there was times when I would have dark nights of the soul and I would just get so angry with the universe, because I have been through a lot in my lifetime, especially my childhood, which I had a lot of resentment about for a long time. And that resentment was something that I needed to deal with, because energetically it was holding me back from really seeing how those experiences have created this energy that I carry now, and how it was so necessary for me to go through that, for me to get to this point of having a deeper understanding and knowledge of our universe. And so eventually I started to understand that dark nights of the souls were a beautiful indicator that there were huge spiritual blessings coming, and that this was a necessary part of my journey. And so I accepted it as such. And although it was still difficult to go through those emotions, I began to have a perspective shift where I saw that these dark nights of the souls were an indicator that there was huge spiritual blessings coming and understandings coming. It gave me a sense of excitement of like, all right, like this is part of the journey, and then showing myself some more love in those moments, you know, understanding that that was a difficult period that I was going through. So just being more intentional about how I talked to myself in those moments, how I treated myself, just being more forgiving about like what I could handle and not handle during those times. So just showing a lot of that self-love through that awareness of what these dark nights of the souls are. They're not just like some random thing that's happening or something that has been put on you to punish you. It's really something that is meant to transform your energy. Another disclaimer that will happen throughout your spiritual ascension process is just feelings of isolation. As you go through these awakenings, you do go through a process where you realize that you're not connecting with people that you may have connected with before through sheer changes that you make. So for example, with the root chakra healing, let's say you give up alcohol and you may feel a sense of isolation from friends that you used to drink with all the time. Maybe the experiences you have around them when you're not drinking are not as fulfilling, and you just aren't relating with them as much anymore, which is always a natural part of our lives, but it can be difficult in the spiritual ascension process because it's a continual process of feeling isolation, and it's just honestly just pushing you away from energetic forces that are hindering your own. As you go through a spiritual ascension process, you just do not have the ability to deal with energy that is not in alignment with yours. It just physically takes so much out of you. And so when you've done that root chakra healing, you really notice how much it's taking out of you to be around certain energy. You just choose to separate yourself from those toxic energies, and in that process you then realize, like, wow, I really feel like I don't connect with a lot of people I used to, and that can be really scary and just frightening, and it can put you down this path of wondering if there's something wrong with you. But it's just, again, a very normal part of spiritual awakening, and it's only meant to bring you to a place of deeper and better understanding of what your energy is trying to show you or guide you to. Eventually, these feelings of isolations will bring you to a point of being a spiritual teacher within your community and really communicating with the people around you what you're feeling on the inside, and that becomes easier as you go through a spiritual ascension process, and you are able to feel more grounded in how you communicate these ideas. I just wanted to mention those things in case you are met with these difficulties, so you know that this is a part of the journey. It's very natural and not to be defeated by it. So with that being said, let's close out this episode. I really hope that that was helpful for you. I hope that that gave you a lot of insight about what it means to go through your root chakra healing. A lot of it is about building political awareness that is around your root chakra, and the way that our society and this capitalist system is set up really affects our ability to heal our root chakra. And by having that awareness, then we can provide ourselves with the tools needed to heal our root chakra. This was an overview of root chakra healing. I'm sure I could have gone into more detail. I actually didn't cover everything that I talked about in the outline, just for time's sake and to keep this concise and not all over the place. So yeah, I'm gonna close with an oracle card reading like I do for every single episode, and it is gonna be with the Sacred Sea Oracle deck. And I talk about this deck in the first episode on this channel, and just kind of my spiritual journey of acquiring this deck and how meaningful it is for me. So I am going to pull a card out of this, and just I will be asking the collective consciousness of the Sea Oracle, our ancestors, any spirits that are overseeing this act of divination at this moment. I am the Kundalini Sea Queen just popped out, and this was actually in the last reading, and when we talked about, you know, the overview of spiritual ascension, this was what was on the bottom of the deck, so this just popped out again. Another synchronicity, and very in sync with what we're talking about, because everything that has to do with our spiritual ascension process is also very much connected to our Kundalini rising and healing. And so another little reminder from the beautiful universal energies that are out there. So please, universe and collective consciousness and spirit guides, please place the card that you would like to share with the collective that is watching this video at this time or whenever this video reaches them. Please provide a piece of advice that can be used to help those who are ready to take this path of spiritual ascension at this moment. Thank you so much for your love, support, and care. Okay, I'm gonna do 3 more. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so on top of the deck, wow, we have the Sea Goddess of Momentum, consistent communication. So that's a number 28. So let's take a look in the book. So Sea Goddess of Momentum, consistent communication. Affirmation: I will keep moving forward day by day, moment by moment, and action by action. And in order to accomplish my dreams and make them my reality, I will take impeccable care of my mind and body so I can continue to do what I love and create a life I love living. Wow, that is so synchronistic with what we talked about in this episode, because it is just taking it moment by moment, action by action, day by day, living in the present, and really finding that voice of intuition that exists in the present moment, and taking care of our mind and body through raising our awareness so we can have more intention in how we take care of our body. All of these things we talked about as being the cornerstones and the foundation for creating the reality that you want to be in. And so the sacred meanings: devoted actions, keep moving forward, steadfast focus, take good care of your mind and body, take small actions that add up to your dreams, stay fueled, remain inspired, don't quit, you were meant for this. So the sacred message, it is so powerful that you have the Sea Goddess of Momentum appear for you. She is calling on you to activate the forward momentum required to expedite your dreams into reality. You have worked so hard and have accumulated so many skills and tools for your toolbox. What you do with them is up to you, but you know what you need to do, and it is time for you to dig in and keep the momentum energy fueled. Doing so will send the universe a powerful message and activate your higher self to kick into gear, bringing you more of what you dreamed of. This is so on point, y'all. So on point with what we were talking about. It is about creating that toolbox for yourself, that toolkit of coping mechanisms to keep you on your feet throughout this spiritual ascension process, and to really dig in and send that powerful message to the universe that you are ready to take this responsibility and to activate your higher self through these actions that you take day by day. So what a powerful sacred message that was, that's so in tune with what this episode was about. Let's jump into this sacred sea ritual. See and feel yourself as a master, just as you are right now. And let this drive you to take committed action towards your visions and goals. Strength is accumulated with daily practice and enduring difficult moments that make you want to stop. So this is it. That phrase right there is all about your root chakra healing. Strength is accumulated with daily practice and enduring the difficult moments that make you want to stop. Talking about those dark nights of the souls, being confronted with your ego and shadow selves, and really going through the thick of that in your root chakra healing. And your root chakra healing is the longest period of healing that you'll go through. For me, it was about 2 to 3 years of pretty intense root chakra healing, but then a year of super intense root chakra healing. And so just keeping that momentum going is being the sea goddess of momentum, that's the energy being pulled on, continuing to take committed action and knowing what your intentions are at the end of the day and staying committed to your vision. The sea goddess of momentum works closely with the sea goddess of self-mastery. They want you to know they are assisting you on your path to self-actualize embodiment. You must keep your energy balanced as you access new levels of personal power, stretching through any difficulties. This can be accomplished through devotional acts of self-care, y'all, hydrating and nourishing your human form with pure foods and water. This was everything that we were just talking about in terms of root chakra healing, the importance of nourishing our body. It's important for us to have that awareness of what is good for our bodies and what's not, and therefore we can be energetic filters for our body. And so this is everything that we were talking about, the importance of really building the root chakra parts of ourselves, which involves the way that we nourish our stomach, the home of more serotonin receptors than our brains. This is so synchronistic. And here we go, like I said earlier, research and use your intuition to find the right balance of these nutrients. So use a combination of research and your intuition, which again, your intuition gets stronger when you have awareness of what is happening in the world around us. Then your intuition has a deeper understanding of what the general energy of the environment is. Keep your momentum steady as you move, breathing deeply and accessing parts of yourself that are unfamiliar. As these new parts of you strengthen, you will begin to feel your dreams coming into their fullest form. What an amazing oracle card reading. That was so on point with everything we talked about throughout this episode. So what a great way to round it out. Thank you so much, dear's collective consciousness, ancestors, spirit guides that oversaw this act of divination. I am so grateful for your wisdom. And on that note, I want to thank you for watching this video as well, and I will see you on the next one. Please stay in tune to see when the next one will be released. And on that note, namaste.